Welcome to Stitchery Stories, where textile artists share their life in fabric and thread, inspiration, techniques, disasters and delights. And I'm Susan Reeks, enthusiastic embroiderer and textile arts dabbler who also loves podcasting. So take a break and enjoy our light-hearted chat, and please share with your friends so they can enjoy it too. Hello and welcome today to our lovely guest, Alison Carpenter-Hughes. Hi Alison.
Hi Sue.
It's lovely to meet you today, and I'm really looking forward to our chat.
Me too.
Oh, I've got Alison's bio here. Ali is a multi-award winning mixed media artist, writer and workshop facilitator, focusing on free motion embroidery as an art form, exploring the sewing machine as a tool for drawing or painting. She exhibits and sells artwork internationally, works on private and public commissions, and has taught art to people of all ages for over 20 years. Starting her art practice in earnest in 2018, the last 2 years have been a whirlwind of activity, with wonderful opportunities happening quickly and organically. Oh, well, you know I'm going to ask you about that, don't you? Inspired by everyday experience and symbolism, amongst many other things, Ali seeks to create a personal connection to her imagination through visual storytelling, but to also leave the narrative open for the viewer to create their own connection. Working mostly with embroidered figures, partially rendered, she often leaves loose hanging threads that make them seem as though they are drifting off into a dreamlike state, highlighting the passing of time. She likes there to be a certain ambiguity to the work that reveals only a fragment of the story. Oh, that needs a ... at the end, doesn't it there? As usual, everybody, all links will be on her episode at stitcherystories.com. So you can go there, and of course some images as well, so you can go and have a look at the art that we are talking about. So there we are. Welcome again, Ali.
Thank you.
Right then, before we dig down into your story, would you like to share with us what you're working on and what's got you excited?
Well, it's a very strange time at the moment with lockdown, so I've had to completely readapt what I've been doing. Yeah. I was doing a residency at De Montfort University, and also planning towards a solo exhibition later on in this year, and applying for funding. So that's all kind of gone out the window at the moment. As I'm working from home, I decided to start working on some smaller pieces, and I've been doing some pieces as part of the Artist Support Pledge, which was set up by a gentleman online. I know his first name's Matthew, I'm sorry, his second name's completely gone. So basically you create a piece of art for anything for £200 or under, and then sell it. And once you've got £2,000, you then take 20% and you buy another artist's piece of work. And I just thought it was a really wonderful idea. So I started doing these smaller pieces and focusing on hoop art. So I've been doing some eye portraits. They're kind of surreal little pieces, playing with I've done like a rainbow with an eye within it, and one to do with stars and space, and I'm working on one at the moment to do with flowers, and it's actually called Forget Me Not, because I was thinking about how we're not able to see the people we normally see at the moment. But I've been doing quite a few, and I have a fascination with eyes within my art. I started doing eyes a while ago, kind of based around the idea of the lover's eye, which were little paintings that were around in the 18th and 19th century. Right. And they were given as a kind of a little intimate thing from a lover or loved one. So the person looking at it would know whose the eye was, but anyone else looking at it wouldn't know. So it was had this kind of anonymous element to it. And the thing I like about the eye portraits is that you've almost got this eye kind of gazing out from this otherworldly beyond, and sometimes looking directly at the viewer. Yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment. I've also had more time to focus on the business elements of my practice. So that's actually, being a very disorganised person, has actually been a kind of a godsend. So even though it's a kind of awful situation we're in, I think it's, with people are having to be adaptable and looking at other ways of doing things. And that's exactly what I've been doing. But I've also had the new Stitch magazine that's just come out over the last week. I've got an article in there, and also my first project. So I'm very excited about that.
Oh, brilliant. Yes, that's the tiger.
Yes. It's based on an Edo tiger that I saw when I was doing residency in Tokyo. And it's made with kimono fabrics that I found while I was out there, and also part of an old obi, which is the sash that goes around the kimono. Yeah. So I'm really excited. I still haven't got the magazine yet. I'm waiting for my copy. I did try to go and get it from a shop, but they'd sold out, so I've still not actually seen it yet. So I'm very, very excited to see it.
Yeah, no, it looks great. Well, I get subscription to that, so it arrived. It comes like a bit earlier than what it is in the shops as well. So no, it looks really good. So nice and colourful, colours.
Oh,
yeah, it looks great. Right. Oh, lots of things to talk about there. Yeah, the Artist Support Pledge. I'd seen various people doing things for that. These things like erupt, don't they? You just find them, but you don't actually know why or where they've come from or really what everyone's supposed to be doing. Everyone just kind of jumps on the bandwagon and does it. And I'm thinking, what is this all about? So thank you for telling us about that.
Yeah, sorry, terribly remiss of me to forget the chap's surname, but if you put Artist Support Pledge, you'll find the link to him, I'm sure. So
eye portraits. Now that's quite an interesting topic as well, because quite often when people are doing either portraits or even animals, everybody always says they start with the eye, because without the eye there's not really a character there, which I always find quite an interesting idea. Now obviously you're just been focusing on the eye, and as you say, in those where they were given us love tokens, as it were, then the whole idea was nobody actually knew who around the eye either. It didn't know who it was. So that's I've never heard that story before.
I think that they were sometimes used to remember loved ones who had passed away as well. So they were quite often encircled by jewels and gold. Yeah. Some of the pieces I've done in the past have had quite ornate frames around them to kind of emulate that. But these new pieces, I've actually been focusing more on, I suppose, using the eye, kind of adding a surreal element to it and having a bit more of a story around it, and also playing with different materials as well as to sew on to.
Yeah, I think it's good sometimes to have that challenge of, well, I've got this kind of series going, but what am I going to do with it, or how can I use it to try new things out? So yeah, it's obviously been keeping you engaged, hasn't it, and busy?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with lockdown is a lot of people have been saying they've been finding it difficult to get creative because of how they've been feeling, which is understandable. But actually, I've got ideas pouring out at the moment, so it's actually been really good for me. And I think it's because having that time and space to just concentrate on art, because I do work part-time, and obviously life in general, sometimes you're just rushing around and not having time to just focus on being creative.
It's interesting as well that you've, as you say, lots of people have had their residencies cancelled, everything's been cancelled, and so it's this like, well, what else can we do? How else can we earn a living? How else can we show our art, or what can we do? And so I think generally people have taken, as much as they could, an opportunity to kind of stop and look at what they're doing and what else they can do. And as you say, look at some of the business aspects of your practice as well, because I know lots of people just want to sit and do their embroidery all day long, but if you're earning a living at it, that's impossible. Because you'll never, nobody will know you exist, and you'll never market what you're doing. So, good positive things on all fronts there, Alison.
Yes, I've even started working with an online business coach as well. So super organised now. I will be.
Very good. Right. Oh, well, I might pick your brains about that later as well. Right then. Now, you said you've been doing this for like a long time, and then the phrase starting her art practice in earnest in 2018. So first of all, what kind of got you interested in embroidery and textile art? And then secondly, that leap to obviously some trigger to say, right, I'm going to do more of this in 2018.
Yes. Well, I've had a very long, windy path to where I am now.
I think we all do, don't we?
Yeah. I actually started a fashion degree in the 1990s, which I only did for very, very, well, I think it was like a matter of weeks, because I really had actually wanted to do textile design, but I couldn't get onto the course that I wanted.
Right.
And then I ended up doing a fine art degree. I wasn't really thinking of textiles as I suppose, in a sewing capacity.
Yeah.
It was more to do with pattern design. And I have had no sewing skills whatsoever, and my mum is really amazing at both sewing and knitting, and then my sisters, one's amazing at sewing, the other one's amazing at knitting. I couldn't do any of those things. And I've been quite a sort of a late bloomer in that way. So when I was at uni, I started creating my own clothes patterns, and then a bit later on altering clothing.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know what I was doing, because I don't actually know how to follow a pattern, and that's why I was creating my own patterns. And sort of making it up as I went along. And then I'd had this thing in the back of my mind for quite a while that I wanted to learn machine embroidery. I think it was in 2016, I saw this advert for a creative textiles class, and one evening a week, and I went along, and the amazing teacher called Anne Crosby, she was really encouraging, because she had quite a large class, but if there was anything that in particular that we wanted to learn, she was happy to teach us it.
Yeah.
And I told her about the free motion embroidery, and she gave me a quick lesson in it, and then since then I've kind of been teaching myself. And I started off with some quite, I suppose, I don't know, well, just kind of pretty pictures type stuff. I hadn't even done that much, but then in the beginning of 2018, I started the Toru Namakawa Residency locally at my studio that I'm at now called Studio Name. And I knew that I wanted to do some sewn pieces with a story behind them. I'm actually an insomniac, but when I do sleep, I have very vivid dreams, sometimes lucid dreams. So sleep's quite a strong theme for me. And I decided to do some work around this theme. And I wanted to do a piece of my dad, and because he basically, as soon as he sits down in his armchair, he's asleep. So, whether he's watching telly or reading a book. So I wanted to sort of do this affectionate piece of him. And then he actually had, just before I started the work, he'd actually had a heart attack, and he was in hospital for quite a long time. And he let me take these photos. So it was sort of, it had another kind of poignancy to it. But that kind of started things off. And then over the last 2 years, so it's basically just been these last 2 years that I've been focusing on the free motion embroidery. I've had so many amazing things happen. Part of the residency, I had a solo show. I've won awards. So I was so chuffed last year. I won Needlecrafter of the Year, and I've had public and private commissions and sales, been in other residencies and exhibitions, one including a piece at the Saatchi Gallery. And I've started writing and doing projects for magazines, which is one of the things, one of my goals. So, things have been happening really quite quickly and quite excitingly, and it's been a really amazing kind of roller coaster ride. So far,
it certainly sounds like it. But I always think you're never going to get anywhere by just sitting on your settee and not doing or saying anything. So as much as it's like, these things have happened, undoubtedly they've happened because you've got off your backside, or you've done something to make things happen.
Completely, yes. I mean, I'm definitely very much a person who think you have to be proactive in reaching your goals.
That's right,
and you can't wait for it just to come to you. And it's been amazing that the residency I did in locally originally, I saw something on Facebook about it by chance, and I just thought, right, I'm going to go for it, and I got it, and that's kind of started off me on this pathway. And I think I do have quite periods of having a lack of motivation and being disorganized, but then I'll give myself another nudge and kind of push myself on a bit more. And but I have also, along that path, I've also been meeting really amazing supportive people, and particularly the directors of Studio Name, Steve and Yuka, because they've been so supportive, and they have kind of kept prodding me along as well. So and it just seems that sometimes when you do have those periods of time where you feel either a bit low or a lack of motivation, something or someone comes along and they do give you another like little kick.
Yeah, people come along at the right time and place, I find.
They do.
Yeah, I used to see this with my online client work. You'd either just a client had finished, or they didn't want to carry on with you anymore, or you decided, no, actually, this client's a bit of a nightmare, and I'm going to kind of nicely get rid of them as soon as I can. And the minute you do, you've opened up a space for something better and more suitable to come along. So, yes, as much as it's good to kind of keep on with things as best you can, sometimes I think you've just got to say to yourself, just let it go. Something will come and you're making space for something better and more aligned with what you want to do. So yeah, I've become a great believer in that kind of thing. Yes, you need to put yourself out there. You need to put yourself in the right place. And when you are in the right place, then you can accept these things. And as you say, make connections with people. You don't know who you're going to meet tomorrow. That's going to be really pivotal in the next stage of your life. Yeah, I find it all very fascinating, that kind of thing.
I think it's also the thing where things happen for a reason as well. And even just things like I was made redundant and then preferred customer care work. So I got a part-time job at a local arts centre, and you start to be in the right environment and mixing with people that have similar interests and people that do kind of help push you forward. It's a domino effect, definitely.
It most definitely is, yeah. And I'm sure people find that really inspiring as well, that if you do start to make some moves and do things and start something off, then, as you say, things do start to snowball and grow. So I think that would be an inspiring story for people to listen to as well, and particularly at this point in time. Obviously, you've mentioned there, you've now got yourself a business coach, the people at the gallery. Is there any particular inspirations that you work to and that keep you going?
God, there's so much inspiration. It's very difficult to mention it all, but I think I'm always drawn to colour, pattern and storytelling, basically, and that has definitely been affected by things growing up and also things that are going on now. And
we're not short of stories now, are we, Craig?
No. And even just things like when I was 14, I was given Japanese style dressing gown by my sister, and it had originally been my great grandmother's. So it's well over 100 years old, very, very delicate state. But it's this beautiful silk style kimono. And that kind of set me off on an interest in Japanism. And it also, from that age, I was really, one of my dreams was to go to Japan, which is what I did last year. And I suppose it's things like that where it's strange how things can kind of gestate and you don't really know the connection or understand the connection at that point. But then something happens and it all seems to start to connect.
Yeah.
My interest in artists like Pierre Bonnard and Gustav Klimt and Vincent van Gogh, they were all influenced by Japanism. I'm really interested in their way they work and the colours and, again, the patterns. Yeah. But then I've got this other element where my mum and dad were always taking us to historical places, and they're avid readers of, fantasy and adventure, and the storytelling element is there. And although she's a very popular artist, I've absolutely loved Frida Kahlo's work.
Yeah.
And more recently, there's photographers like Tim Walker and Oleg Aprisco, which I'm interested in. So for me, it's also kind of everyday experiences. So I like a combination of something that happens in the day or an emotion that's set off that will set an idea off in place. But then there's that kind of surreal, slightly storytelling element will combine with it. I said earlier about, having very vivid dreams, and they definitely come into it. I like to have contrast between sort of dreams and reality, and there being that kind of hazy line between it. But I do want there to be meaning to my work as well. So I'm interested in the more intimate and vulnerable moments in life, but also detachment and kind of inner strength. So finding things within yourself. There's a lot of stuff, but
definitely
gets all kind of modelled up and comes out in different ways.
Yeah. Now, one of the pieces that I really love, and you're back to when you're talking about the kind of intimate moments, is that one of the breastfeeding child. That's just a fantastic piece. Is that it is very much the story in there. It's just a very intimate moment. It's just a lovely piece. Is
Yes,
that?
little Connie. Yes, that's my great
Yes.
great niece. Yeah, it was a real labour of love to create that piece.
Yeah.
Definitely a moment of intimacy. I think the thing with the sleep element was that when we're asleep, we are very vulnerable.
Yes.
If you're sleeping together with someone, or if like the breastfeeding one, it is a very intimate thing as well to do in front of someone, even nodding off on the sofa in front of someone, you have to be able to have that trust there to do it.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to show those connections, kind of letting go and being connected.
Now, in terms of techniques, then obviously you prefer the machine embroidery side of things. Do you mostly just work in machine embroidery?
Yes, I have tried hand embroidery, but I just don't have the patience for it. I mean, free motion embroidery is quite a time and labour intensive. Well, certainly the way I do it anyway. But I can see results happening more quickly than I can with hand embroidery. And I suppose I prefer the texture to it as well. But I've been working with different materials, not necessarily associated with sewing. So I've used old banknotes and paper bags, and I usually strengthen them with a water soluble stabilizer, and also sometimes a canvas backing. Some of the materials can be so delicate that as soon as you start sewing on them, they just disintegrate.
Because there's one of a £5 note, isn't there, with the Queen on it, which I thought was interesting. And I was thinking, was that a real fiver?
Yes, it was. Yeah, I've done a 10 shilling as well. 10 shilling note. It's interesting actually, because I've worked on some notes from other countries as well.
Yeah,
I mean, that's one of the things. I'm kind of exploring new materials all the time, and because I am a relative beginner to free motion embroidery, I'm learning all the time, and I have to work very intuitively with the materials. It is a constant learning curve. It's interesting to work with. And particularly with the notes, they do need a lot of stabilizing because they're so small as well. And when you're trying to put a lot of detail into a very small area,
you're going to cut it almost.
It does. And I have had a few alarming moments when you think, I've only got this one thing that I can work on, and something horrible's happened to it. But I think also the element with the free motion embroidery as well, it allows me to play with symbolism in my pieces as well, and not just with the imagery, because but through the use of materials, I can add a 3D element or to a mostly 2D process, and that quite often happens through chance more than anything. I say I'm still learning it, and the pieces they get so sort of thick with thread that it starts to distort the fabric, and you get this almost kind of 3D element coming out. And with the water soluble stabilizer, during the finishing process, I will work with that, and I'll kind of push out the contours and whatever it's kind of the piece needs.
Like manipulate.
That's right. Yes. And it's the same with the loose threads as well. Pieces I've been working on more recently haven't had the loose thread element, but I do kind of play with that as part of the storytelling, kind of, I suppose, thoughts of kind of fragility and the passing of time and threads of stories.
It softens the boundary, doesn't it, around it?
It does, yeah. I can play around with the final piece being left in quite an organic shape. I haven't had all of my pieces framed, and there are pros and cons to that.
Yeah. Now, was you talked at length before about the different opportunities that have come along, and there's quite a lot of things that would be deemed as a high point there. So is there like one that really stands out from that list of high points, or is there another one that you never mentioned for us, Alison, that you could just share with us?
There have been a lot, but I think the residency in Tokyo would have to be the high point. I did a residency, it's the Air 3331 residency at Arts Chiyoda in Tokyo, and it was, I suppose it's a bit like now actually, that I've had this really solid time to focus only on my art, and with Tokyo, the culture as well, with absolutely no other distractions. it was just an amazing experience. It was fully funded. I had the support of, again, Steve and Yuka, the directors of my studio. They'd organised sponsorship from Genome sewing machines for me.
Wow.
So they gave me a machine while I was out there. They wined and dined me. They're absolutely lovely. They gave me this super duper amazing sewing machine when I got back home. And I was really lucky to have the cross-cultural dialogue with the other artists I was living with, and they were really supportive and lovely. And I mean, Tokyo was just an amazing city. I was there for 2 months.
2 months. I was going to ask you how long were you there? 2 months. That's brilliant.
And I came back with this sort of wealth of material to work with, and it was exciting. I wanted to work with found materials while I was there. I mean, the first 3 weeks, it's quite overwhelming because there's just so much.
It is.
And I wasn't quite sure what I was going to focus on. But then I realised that I was really interested in the people and particularly sort of faces. And I started, One Piece Girl on a Train. I'd seen this girl just listening to music on her headphones, kind of in her own little world. And I took a very surreptitious photo of her. And I knew I wanted to do a piece on her, but I wasn't quite sure, how I was going to do it. And then I went to a craft shop to buy some threads, and the little paper bag they gave me was gingham, a kind of gingham pattern, like the girl was wearing on her blouse. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's my base. And it was, sort of again, things happen organically. So I did my Girl on Train piece. It was an amazing experience. I mean, the festivals in particular were just mind-blowing, and just sort of these joyous events. And I was lucky to be there at the period when the cherry blossom was out.
Oh, how lovely.
And actually that was kind of part of my application, because there was the thing with the cherry blossom, sakura, is that the Japanese see it as a symbol of transient nature of life and new beginnings. That kind of philosophy I felt fitted in very well with the way I work.
Yeah.
Idea of something that's imperfect, impermanent and incomplete. And that's how I see my pieces. So
that all fitted together really well then, didn't it? I had 3 weeks in Japan in 2 different places when I worked at Nissan. So all my days were spent in the car factory discussing how we were going to write systems to manage packaging. So I escaped a couple of times, and I went to Kamakura, where all the shrines and things
I went there. Yeah,
that was lovely. And but I was based at Yokohama, where the port and the container port and stuff is. So so that's my experience of Japan. Is all like car factories and being taken out for every single night. We were hosted somewhere, and it was amazing. It really was. In fact, I found some photos the other day, and I looked at them, and I can't even remember having them, but they were there, of one insane night out we had at a karaoke place, where you hired your own room, and this group of you, and there's these pictures of, it was just hilarious, and I'd just totally forgotten all about that. You think you're never going to forget all these things, and you damn well do, and it was just brilliant. I just had a right old laugh with myself, thinking, good grief, these pictures.
It's just an absolutely, it's such an interesting mix of things in Tokyo, and new and old. Yeah, I mean, your eyes are out on stalks most of the time when you're walking around. It's just, it's an amazing place.
Brilliant. So, Ali, with all those fabulous high points and enjoying all that time in Japan and stuff, so have you got any stories of us to make us giggle about when something didn't quite go as you'd planned? And what did you learn from that experience? Because there's always a learning experience, isn't there?
Yes. To do with my piece on Little Connie, which is the breastfeeding baby, I'd been working on it for about a month, and it was this... the image that I'd been sent by my niece was taken in the evening, and it was a very kind of yellowy light, and I'd been influenced by these colours, and basically the baby was looking like a kind of jaundiced mini me. And I was also having problems with her nose, because she's got this tiny little snub nose, and it was coming out a little bit too piggy. So it was
it's a jaundiced
basically. I left it for a month. I was getting so so kind of disheartened with it. And I came back again and looked at it again, and then it just all seemed to kind of fall back into place. I did actually have to do the nose 3 times, and in the end I did also have to do some hand sewing on it as well, because it had got so thick with thread, and I'd had to unpick it so many times. It was a nightmare. But I suppose what I learned from that experience was it's okay to step away from a piece and leave it and come back to it and look at it with fresh eyes. But it is also worth persevering with pieces as well, because they can feel like they're, a disaster, but actually they can actually sometimes work out to be some of your best pieces.
And that's come out to be so delightful that well done for rescuing it. As you say, you were looking at it there going, crikey, what have I created? And now it's just the most, serene, beautiful piece.
Well, she's won me 2 awards as well. So it's just
brilliant. Well, there you are. You see, the benefit of keeping going with it.
Yes.
Oh, that's a brilliant story. Thank you. I'm glad I asked you that one. And really sort of as we're moving towards the end of our time, Alison, crikey, time goes past, doesn't it?
It does.
Obviously, lots of things have been shut down and closed and things, but looking towards the future, have you got any kind of plans and ideas and things that you'd like to share with us just as we wrap up today?
Yeah, sure. There's obviously there are a lot of things I'm not sure about and how they're going to proceed. I am hoping that my solo show will still go ahead at the LCB depot later on in the year, if not this year, hopefully next year, but we'll wait and see, and then
see what happens.
I did have a submission accepted from the Magistrates Association, 100 Years of Justice, so I'm going to be shortly working on that piece. It was given to 20 different artists to work on either the past or the future of a particular subject to do with justice, and mine is the future of the freedom of expression, and I am really looking forward to getting going on that piece, because that is just so important to me as an artist, and particularly in the this day and age of kind of media manipulation and we don't know what's true and what's false, I think it can be, and even things like trolling on social media, people don't necessarily, their ideas might not be sound, but they should still be allowed to express them. And I suppose it's and sometimes if you are able to express those things, then you can have a discussion about it and you can change people's minds about things. But if it's kind of tucked away and suppressed, then those kind of things can go underground.
And then it gets worse then.
It does. It's a very interesting subject anyway.
It is, without a doubt.
I'll be moving into a newer and larger studio soon as well. And my goal is just to have to try and work towards a sustainable art career, because I'm still working part-time, but I've got lots of ideas for starting to sell patterns and kits and products and doing more workshops and writing, and I'm hoping to do more residencies at some point as well.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's developing that path of different products and different revenue streams that all together as a whole work. And that's not just in art. I do the same thing, and it's an interesting way of life these days as well. I think that you've balancing off the streams, and I think the more you can balance and have things coming from different places, the more resilient you are.
That's right.
Because then there's not so much can affect you.
Yes, it's having those different avenues of income, isn't it? So fingers crossed. I'll just have to get more organised. That's the main thing, I think.
Well, that is the crux of the matter, isn't it? If you've got lots of streams of things, then it can rapidly turn into a nightmare. So that's a focus point for sure, is if you're having all these streams in, is to make sure that they are working in your favour and not killing you off with too much. Yes. Oh dear. Do you know, Alison, that's been really fabulous speaking to you today. I've absolutely loved your point of view on things, and I can just tell there's just so much has happened for you over the last couple of years. And I think you've built yourself a really strong foundation to move forward and to follow your goal and your dream of making this into a sustainable life for you.
Thank you.
Well done to doing that. Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I just hope people find it inspiring as well, to encourage others to follow that path and follow their dream as well, because this is a recurring theme now. I've had quite a lot of guests who've gone down this path. So I think it's all very heartening for people that there is opportunities there, and we can make a career and a job and a life in whatever it is that we want to do. I think in that respect, we're very blessed these days.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Right. It's been absolutely wonderful speaking with you, Ali. And we'll all got our fingers crossed that everything kind of picks up again, and that your residencies and your exhibitions and everything do eventually go ahead. So thank you very much for spending your time with us today. It's been fantastic. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, then please join the Stitchery Stories fan club so you can get an email when a new episode is released. It's a quick and easy way of listening and of keeping up with any news and information around this podcast. Please visit stitcherystories.com. Of course, you can listen to Stitchery Stories on plenty of podcast apps at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and plenty more besides. You can also ask your smart speaker to play Stitchery Stories podcast too. But wherever you listen, why not leave us a rating and a review to encourage other people to listen too? I very much appreciate you taking the time to do that for me. So that is the end of our Stitchery story for today. Keep stitching, keep smiling, and keep creating your very own Stitchery Stories.